The divorce papers were still warm in her hand when the cold bit through her dress. Her husband had thrown her out, not for another woman, not for money, but because her body had failed her. Infertile. Worthless. Those were his final words before the door slammed shut. Now she sat shivering on a bus station bench in the middle of winter, watching her breath crystallize in the air, wondering if this was how her story ended. Then she heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, stopping right in front of her. She looked up into eyes she didn't recognize, eyes that would change everything. If you want to know how a single night of compassion rewrote her entire life, stay with me until the end. And please, hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The cold came for Lena like a thief. It slipped beneath her thin dress, wrapped around her ankles, climbed up her spine until her teeth chattered so violently she bit her tongue. The metallic taste of blood mixed with the salt of tears she'd been crying for the past 3 hours. Her hands clutched the divorce papers, already crumpled, already worthless, as if holding them tighter might change what they said. Irreconcilable differences. That's what the legal language called it. But Richard's words had been far more precise. You're broken, Lena. What's the point of a wife who can't give me children? 5 years of marriage, 5 years of doctor's appointments, treatments, hopes raised and shattered. 5 years of watching his love curdle into resentment every time the test came back negative. And tonight, after the final specialist confirmed what they'd both known for months, Richard had made his decision. He'd packed her things while she sat in the living room, numb. 3 suitcases of a life that had once felt full. Then he'd called her a taxi, pressed $200 into her hand like she was a servant being dismissed, and told her he'd already changed the locks. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, he'd said, not meeting her eyes. The taxi driver had asked where she wanted to go. She'd opened her mouth and realized she had no answer. Her parents were gone. Her sister lived across the country with a husband who'd made it clear Lena wasn't welcome. The few friends she'd had before marriage had drifted away during the fertility treatments, exhausted by her single-minded obsession with fixing what was broken inside her. Just drive, she'd whispered. He'd driven her here, to the bus station on the edge of town, and waited while she fumbled with the bills Richard had given her. She'd overpaid, too disoriented to count properly, and stumbled out into the December night. The station was nearly empty. A janitor mopped the floors inside the building, his movements slow and methodical. A homeless man slept against the far wall, wrapped in newspapers. The ticket counter had closed an hour ago. The electronic board showed one more bus tonight, heading north to Chicago, but she had nowhere to go in Chicago. She had nowhere to go anywhere. So she'd sat down on the bench outside, papers in hand, and let the cold have her. Time became strange. She watched people come and go, a young couple arguing, a businessman checking his watch, a mother hushing her crying baby. They moved through the world with purpose, with destinations, while she remained frozen in place. Literally frozen, she realized. Her fingers had gone numb. She couldn't feel her toes. Maybe that was better. At least she couldn't feel anything else either. Excuse me. The voice was male, deep but gentle. She didn't look up. Miss, are you all right? She almost laughed. All right. What a ridiculous question. But she remained silent, staring at the papers in her lap. It's 18 degrees out here. You're going to get hypothermia. 18 degrees. Was that all? It felt colder. It felt like the temperature at the end of the world. I'm fine, she managed to say, though her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. Flat, empty. You're not fine. A pause. How long have you been sitting here? I don't know. Look at me. Please. Something in his tone made her obey. She lifted her head and found herself looking at a man in his late 30s, tall and lean, wearing an expensive-looking wool coat and a concerned expression. He had dark hair touched with gray at the temples, and eyes that were studying her with an intensity that felt almost clinical. Your lips are blue, he said quietly. She touched them with numb fingers. Oh. Where are you trying to go? The simple question broke something inside her. Where was she trying to go? Nowhere. Anywhere. Into the cold until she couldn't feel anything anymore. I don't have anywhere to go, she heard herself say. His expression shifted, not to pity, which she would have hated, but to something else. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. "Dad?" A small voice came from behind him. She looked past the man to see 3 children emerging from a car parked at the curb. A girl about 12 with long dark hair, a boy around 10 wearing glasses, and a younger girl who couldn't have been more than 6 clutching a stuffed rabbit. "Stay by the car, Emma," the man called back, but the oldest girl was already walking toward them, her siblings trailing behind her. "Is she okay?" Emma asked, her eyes wide. "I'm fine," Lena said again, but this time her voice broke on the word. The man crouched down so he was at eye level with her. This close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the stubble on his jaw, the wedding ring still on his finger. "My name is Daniel Cross. These are my children, Emma, James, and Sophie. We were just at a late movie, and I think you need help." "I don't need anything," she said, but even as she spoke, a violent shiver ran through her. "She's freezing, Dad," Emma said softly. "Look at her dress." Lena glanced down at herself and saw what they saw, a woman in a thin cocktail dress, inappropriate for winter, with no coat, no purse, nothing but crumpled papers, and $200 that felt obscene in its inadequacy. "The dress is from dinner," she said, though she wasn't sure why she was explaining. "Earlier, before, she couldn't finish. Before her husband threw her away. Before she became nothing." Daniel stood and turned to his children. "Kids, back to the car." "But Dad," James started. "Now, please." The children retreated, but Lena could see them watching from beside the vehicle, their faces pressed against the windows. Daniel turned back to her. "I'm going to be very direct with you, because I think you're in shock, and we don't have time for anything else. You're going to die if you stay out here much longer. You need warmth, food, and medical attention. I can provide all 3. Will you let me help you?" "You don't know me." "No, I don't. I could be dangerous, crazy." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Are you?" "No." "Then will you let me help you?" She looked at him for a long moment. He looked back, steady and patient, waiting. "Why?" she whispered. "Because someone should have helped me once, and no one did. Because my daughter is watching, and I want her to see that we don't walk past people who need us. Because it's 18 degrees and you're going to lose your fingers if you don't get warm soon." He paused. "Because you look like you've run out of options, and I happen to have one to offer." The tears came then, hot against her frozen cheeks. She couldn't stop them. Daniel pulled off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. It was warm, heated by his body, and the shock of that warmth made her gasp. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried. Her legs shook, barely holding her. Daniel caught her elbow, steadying her. "The papers," she said stupidly, looking down at them scattered on the bench. "Leave them. They're important." "Are they?" He looked at them, and she saw him register what they were. Divorce papers. "Are they important anymore?" She thought about that. About Richard's signature already dry on the page. About the life those papers had ended. About everything they represented that she'd never have. "No," she said finally. "I guess they're not." They walked to the car, Daniel's hand on her elbow, guiding her. The children scrambled out as they approached. "Is she coming home with us?" Sophie asked, clutching her rabbit tighter. "Just for tonight," Daniel said. "To get warm." Emma was looking at Lena with an expression too old for her years. "You don't have anywhere else, do you?" The directness of children, so brutal and so kind at once. "No," Lena admitted. "Then you should stay longer than tonight," Emma said simply. "We have a guest room. Mom's not using it anymore." "Emma," Daniel said, a warning in his voice. "What? It's true." Daniel helped Lena into the passenger seat while the children piled into the back. The car was warm, the heater running, and she felt herself starting to thaw. It hurt. Everything hurt. "I'm Lena," she said quietly as Daniel got in the driver's seat. "Lena Moore." "Nice to meet you, Lena." Daniel pulled out of the parking lot. "Let's get you somewhere warm." The drive took 20 minutes. Lena watched the city pass through the window, buildings giving way to suburbs. suburbs giving way to a neighborhood with old trees and houses set back from the road. Daniel pulled into a driveway in front of a two-story colonial with lights glowing in the windows. "Home," he said simply. She followed them inside on unsteady legs. The warmth of the house hit her like a wall. She stood in the entryway, dripping melted snow onto the hardwood floor, while the children kicked off their shoes and hung up their coats. "Sophie, can you get some blankets from the linen closet?" Daniel asked. Emma T. James, start the fire in the living room. The children scattered to their tasks with the efficiency of a well-run team. Daniel turned to Lena. "Let's get you out of that wet dress," he said, then caught himself. I'll get you something dry to wear. The bathroom is this way." She followed him up the stairs, her legs moving on autopilot. He led her to a bedroom and rummaged through a closet. "These were my wife's," he said, pulling out sweatpants and a sweater. "She was about your size." "Were?" Lena said softly. "She passed away 2 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry." "So am I." He handed her the clothes. "Bathroom's through there. Take your time. There's a shower if you want one." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Lena stood alone in the bedroom, holding clothes that had belonged to a dead woman in a stranger's house, with no idea what happened next. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her makeup was smeared down her face. Her hair was matted with melted snow. Her lips were, as Daniel had said, blue. She looked like a ghost. Maybe that's what she was now, the ghost of who she used to be. She peeled off the wet dress and let it fall to the floor. Standing in her underwear, she could see her body, the body that had failed her, the body that had cost her everything. She touched her stomach gently, the way she used to when she still had hope. Nothing. Empty. Broken. She turned away from the mirror and put on the dead woman's clothes. They fit perfectly. When she came downstairs, the children had transformed the living room. A fire crackled in the fireplace. Blankets were stacked on the couch. Sophie sat on the floor with her rabbit, while James poked at the logs with expert precision. Emma emerged from this kitchen carrying a mug of tea. "Chamomile," she said, handing it to Lena. "It helps when you're upset." "Thank you," Lena managed. Daniel gestured to the couch. "Sit. Warm up." She sat, and Sophie immediately crawled up beside her, pressing close. The simple gesture of trust from this child she didn't know made her throat tight. "Are you sad?" Sophie asked, looking up at her with wide brown eyes. "Sophie," Daniel warned. "It's okay," Lena said. "Yes, I'm sad." "Why?" "How did you explain adult failures to a 6-year-old? How did you explain that sometimes love wasn't enough, that sometimes your body betrayed you, that sometimes you lost everything?" "I had to leave my home," she said carefully, "and I don't have anywhere else to go." Sophie considered this. "You can stay here. We have room." "We'll figure something out," Daniel said, settling into the chair across from them. "For tonight, you're safe and warm. That's what matters." Lena sipped the tea. It was hot and sweet, and she realized she hadn't eaten since breakfast. Her stomach cramped. "When did you last eat?" Daniel asked, watching her. "This morning." "Emma, can you make a sandwich? And soup if we have any." Emma disappeared into the kitchen again. James looked up from the fire. "Are you homeless now?" he asked. "James," Daniel said, "I'm just asking. You said we should always ask direct questions." Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. "I guess I am, for now." "That's sad," Sophie said. "Everyone should have a home." "Yes," Lena agreed. "They should." Emma returned with a plate of sandwiches and a steaming bowl of tomato soup. Lena ate slowly, aware of 3 pairs of young eyes watching her. Daniel watched too, but more carefully, assessing. "Where were you planning to go?" he asked. "Before?" "I don't know. I didn't have a plan." "Family." "No one who would take me in." "Friends?" She shook her head. "Job?" "I haven't worked in 5 years. I was a wife." The bitterness in her voice surprised her. That was supposed to be enough. Daniel leaned forward. "Listen to me carefully, Lena. You're in crisis right now. You're not thinking clearly. Whatever happened tonight, whatever brought you to that bus station, that's not the end of your story. Do you understand?" She looked at him, at his kind eyes and his children's open faces, and the warm room that felt like safety. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. I could be anyone." "You could be," Daniel agreed, "but you're not. You're someone who's been hurt badly enough that you were willing to freeze to death rather than ask for help. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." "It does?" "Yes, it tells me you're proud, that you've been taught your worth is conditional, that you'd rather die than be a burden." He paused. "It also tells me that you need someone to remind you that your worth isn't conditional, that asking for help isn't weakness, that you deserve kindness even when you can't offer anything in return." The words hit her like a blow. She started crying again, unable to stop. Sophie wrapped her small arms around Lena. "Don't cry," she whispered. "You're safe now." But that was exactly why she was crying, because for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. Because this stranger and his children had given her something she'd stopped believing existed: grace without conditions. She cried until she had nothing left. The children stayed close, their presence a comfort she didn't deserve but desperately needed. Daniel sat quietly, letting her have her grief. When she finally stopped, exhausted, he spoke gently. "It's late. You should sleep. Tomorrow, we'll figure out next steps. But for tonight, you're here and you're safe. That's enough." Emma showed her back to the guest room. She'd turned down the bed and left a glass of water on the nightstand. "Dad's good at helping people," she said as Lena sat on the edge of the bed. "That's what he does for work. He solves problems. He'll help you figure things out." "Your mother would be proud of you," Lena said. "All of you. You have such kind hearts." Emma's expression shuddered slightly. "Mom used to say that kindness was the only thing that mattered in the end, that you could lose everything else, but if you kept your kindness, you kept yourself." She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Emma moved toward the door. "Good night, Lena." "Good night. And Emma, thank you." She nodded and left, closing the door softly. Lena lay in the bed, warm for the first time in hours, wearing a dead woman's clothes in a stranger's house. Outside, snow had started to fall. She watched it through the window, white against the darkness. Hours ago, she'd been thrown away, told she was worthless, left with nothing. Now she was here, in this unexpected refuge, offered by people who had no reason to care. She thought about Daniel's words. "That's not the end of your story." Maybe he was right. Maybe this was something else. Not an ending, but a threshold. A doorway into something she couldn't yet see. She pulled the blankets up to her chin and let herself feel, just for a moment, something she'd thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Small and fragile and probably foolish. But there, nonetheless. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering everything in white. Inside, she closed her eyes and let herself sleep, safe in the unexpected kindness of strangers who'd chosen to see her humanity when the person who'd promised to love her had looked away. And in the morning, when she woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the sound of children's voices downstairs, she would begin to learn what it meant to be seen, not for what she could give, but simply for who she was. But that was tomorrow's lesson. Tonight, she simply slept. Lena woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter. For a moment, disoriented in the unfamiliar room, she thought she was still married, that Richard would be downstairs reading the paper, that her life was still intact. Then she remembered. The cold. The bus station. The divorce papers left on a bench to be swept away with yesterday's trash. She sat up slowly, her body aching. The bedside clock read 8:30. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting everything gold. Outside, the world was white with fresh snow, pristine and deceptively peaceful. She found her cocktail dress from the night before folded neatly on a chair, dried but wrinkled beyond saving. A note sat on top of it in careful handwriting. "Good morning. There are clothes in the closet that should fit. Take whatever you need. Breakfast downstairs when you're ready. No rush." Daniel Lena opened the closet and found it stocked with women's clothing, practical pieces in neutral colors organized by type. His wife's clothes, she realized. The woman who had died and left this man alone with 3 children to raise. The woman whose kindness, according to Emma, had mattered more than anything else. She chose jeans and a soft blue sweater, feeling like an intruder even as she was grateful for the warmth. In the bathroom, she found unopened toiletries, toothbrush, soap, shampoo, laid out on the counter. Daniel had thought of everything. She showered, washing away the remnants of the worst night of her life, and dressed in a dead woman's clothes for the second time in 12 hours. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she saw someone she didn't quite recognize. Stripped bare of the life she'd built, she was just Lena. Nothing more, nothing less. The question was, who was that exactly? She went downstairs, following the sound of voices to a large kitchen filled with morning light. Daniel stood at the stove making pancakes while the children sat at a round table, Sophie coloring, James reading a book, and Emma setting out plates and silverware. "Good morning," Daniel said, glancing over his shoulder. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Lena admitted. "Thank you for the clothes and everything else." "Mom always bought extras," Emma said matter-of-factly. "She said you never knew when someone might need something." "Your mom sounds like she was a very special person." "She was," Sophie said, not looking up from her coloring. "She had yellow hair like sunshine, and she sang when she cooked, and she always knew when we were sad, even if we didn't say anything." The description was so vivid, so full of longing, that Lena felt her chest tighten. These children had lost their mother. Daniel had lost his wife. And yet here they were, opening their home to a stranger, offering kindness they had every reason to hoard for themselves. "Pancakes?" Daniel asked, sliding a golden stack onto a plate. "I don't want to impose," Lena started. "You're not imposing," James said, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Dad made extra. He always makes extra." Lena sat at the table and Emma placed a plate in front of her along with syrup and butter. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy and warm, the kind of breakfast she hadn't had in years. Richard had always insisted on protein shakes and egg whites, optimizing every meal for maximum efficiency. "So," Daniel said, joining them at the table with his own plate. "We should probably talk about what happens next." Lena set down her fork, the food suddenly heavy in her stomach. "I know, I can't stay here. I just need to figure out where to go." "That's not what I meant," Daniel said gently. "You can stay as long as you need to, but we should make a plan. Do you have access to any money? A bank account?" Richard gave me $200. Everything else was in his name. "Did you work before the marriage?" "I was a teacher. Elementary school, but that was 5 years ago." "Teaching certification still valid?" She nodded. "I think so." "Good. That's something." Daniel took a sip of his coffee. "What about the divorce? Did you have a lawyer?" "Richard's lawyer drew up the papers. I just signed them." "Did you read them thoroughly?" Lena looked down at her plate. "Not really. I was too upset." Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. "We need to get you a lawyer. You may be entitled to spousal support, division of assets. 5 years of marriage, you have rights." "I don't want anything from him," Lena said quickly. "I just want to be done." "I understand that, but you need to be practical. You have no job, no home, no savings. You need resources to rebuild." "Dad's right," Emma said quietly. "You can't start over with nothing." Lena looked at this 12-year-old girl who spoke with such certainty, such wisdom beyond her years. "When did you get so smart?" "Mom got sick when I was 10, Emma said. "I learned to be practical pretty fast." The words hung in the air, heavy with loss. Daniel reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand. "Here's what I propose," he said, turning back to Lena. "You stay here in the guest room while we sort out the legal situation. I have a friend who's a family law attorney. I'll call her today. In the meantime, you help around the house if you want to feel useful. Cooking, cleaning, whatever makes you comfortable. No pressure, no timeline. Just a safe place to figure things out." "Why would you do this?" Lena asked. "You don't know me. I could be lying about everything." "Are you?" "No." "Then that's all I need to know." Daniel paused. "Look, Lena, I know what it's like to have your life fall apart. When my wife died, I was drowning. People helped me, brought meals, watched the kids, just showed up when I couldn't ask them to. I'm just paying that forward." "It's more than that," Lena said. "What you're offering, it's too much. It's a guest room and some help with legal paperwork. It's not too much. It's what any decent person would do." But Lena knew that wasn't true. Decent people had walked past her on that bench last night. Decent people had looked away. Only this man, this stranger with sad eyes and 3 grieving children, had stopped. "Okay," she said softly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Daniel said with a slight smile. "You haven't seen how messy these kids can be." "Hey," James protested, "I'm very neat." "You left your backpack in the middle of the hallway 3 times this week," Emma pointed out. "That's strategic placement for easy access." Despite everything, Lena laughed. The sound surprised her, rough and unpracticed, but real. After breakfast, while Daniel called his attorney friend, Emma showed Lena around the house. It was larger than it appeared from outside, filled with comfortable furniture and family photos. Pictures of Daniel's wife were everywhere. A beautiful woman with blonde hair and a warm smile, always surrounded by her children or holding Daniel's hand. "Her name was Catherine," Emma said, noticing Lena looking at a photo in the hallway. "Everyone called her Kate. She died on a Tuesday. I remember because it was supposed to be pizza night, but we never had pizza. We had sandwiches at the hospital instead." "I'm sorry," Lena said, unsure what else to offer. "Everyone says that, but sorry doesn't bring her back." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Dad says grief is just love with nowhere to go, that we're sad because we loved her so much." "Your dad is a wise man." "Yeah." Emma touched the photo gently. "He tries really hard. Sometimes I hear him crying at night, but he always smiles at breakfast. For us." The image of Daniel crying alone, maintaining strength for his children, made Lena's heart ache. This family had been shattered, and yet they were still standing, still functioning, still kind. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said. "Of course." "Why did your husband leave you? Was it really just because you couldn't have kids?" The question was blunt, but Lena was learning that directness ran in this family. "Yes, that was the main reason." "That's stupid," Emma said flatly. "My friend Olivia's parents adopted her, and they love her just as much as if she was born to them. Kids aren't the only thing that makes a family." "No," Lena agreed quietly. "They're not." "So your husband was just a jerk." "Emma, what?" "It's true. Mom always said that you could tell a lot about a person by how they treat people when things get hard. Your husband threw you away when things got hard. That makes him a jerk." Lena couldn't argue with that logic. "Yes, I suppose it does." Daniel appeared in the hallway. "Emma, easy on the interrogation." "I wasn't interrogating. I was having a conversation." "Uh-huh. Go check on your siblings, please." Emma rolled her eyes but obeyed, leaving Lena alone with Daniel. "Sorry about that," he said. "She's protective. Comes from being the oldest." "It's fine. She's right, actually. About Richard." "My lawyer friend can see you tomorrow at 10. Her name is Margaret Chen, and she's excellent. She'll review your divorce papers and advise you on your options." "I can't afford a lawyer," Lena said. "She's doing it pro bono. I called in a favor." "Daniel, don't argue. You need help, and I'm in a position to provide it. Let me." Lena looked at this man who'd brought her in from the cold, who was calling in favors for a stranger, who'd opened his home without hesitation. "Why are you really doing this?" He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "When Kate was dying, she made me promise something. She said, 'Don't let grief make you small. Don't let it close you off. Keep our home open. Keep loving people.' I've tried to honor that. Some days are easier than others." "This is one of the harder days, isn't it?" Lena asked gently. "Every day is hard, but helping you, it makes me feel like I'm keeping my promise to her, like I'm still the man she believed I was." The raw honesty in his voice moved Lena deeply. This wasn't charity, it was survival. They were both drowning in different ways, reaching for something solid to hold on to. The rest of the day passed in a strange domesticity. Lena helped Emma prepare lunch while James regaled them with facts about space exploration. Sophie followed Lena around like a small shadow, offering her rabbit to hold whenever she looked sad. Daniel worked in his home office, occasionally emerging to check on everyone. In the afternoon, Lena found herself in the kitchen again, this time alone. She opened the refrigerator and assessed the contents. Fresh vegetables, chicken, pasta. Before she could talk herself out of it, she began cooking. She hadn't cooked like this in years. Richard had preferred restaurants or catered meals, claiming her cooking was too simple, too common. But as she chopped vegetables and seasoned chicken, muscle memory took over. Her mother had taught her to cook, back before the cancer took her. These recipes were love made tangible. When Daniel came downstairs an hour later, following the smell, he found a full dinner laid out on the table: roasted chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds, and fresh bread. "You cooked," he said, surprised. "I needed to feel useful," Lena admitted. "I hope that's okay." "Okay? This looks incredible." The children came running at the smell, and for the first time Lena sat down to a family dinner that felt real. They talked over each other, laughing and arguing and sharing their days. James explained his science project. Sophie demonstrated how her rabbit could do tricks. Emma talked about her upcoming school play. "What part did you get?" Lena asked. "Narrator. I don't get to act, but I get to tell the story." "That's the most important part," Lena said. "The story doesn't exist without the narrator." Emma brightened. "That's what I said." After dinner, while Daniel helped Sophie with her bath, Lena found herself washing dishes with Emma and James. "You're a really good cook," James said. "Better than Dad." "Hey, I heard that," Daniel called from upstairs. "You were supposed to," James called back. Lena smiled, scrubbing a pot. "Your dad does just fine." "He does," Emma agreed. "But it's nice having you here. The house feels different." "Different how?" Emma thought about it. "Less sad, maybe. Dad tries to keep things happy, but you can tell he's forcing it sometimes." Tonight felt real. The observation was painfully perceptive. Lena understood exactly what she meant, the difference between going through the motions and actually living. Later, after the children were in bed, Lena found Daniel in the living room, staring at the fire. "Thank you for dinner," he said. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to." She sat in the chair across from him. "Your children are wonderful." "They are. They've been through hell, but they keep going. Sometimes I think they're stronger than I am." "I don't think that's true. They're strong because you showed them how to be." Daniel looked at her, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "Can I ask you something personal? After everything you've done for me? Ask anything. Do you still love him? Your husband?" The question caught her off guard. She thought about Richard, about the man she'd married 5 years ago, full of promise and ambition, about the way his love had curdled into resentment as her body failed to give him what he wanted, about the coldness in his eyes when he'd handed her those divorce papers. "No," she said finally. "I don't think I do. I'm not sure I loved him even when we were together. I loved the idea of him, the life we were supposed to build, but the real him, the man who could throw me away so easily, I don't think I ever really knew that person." "That's probably for the best," Daniel said quietly. "Loving someone who's hurt you that badly, it's its own kind of prison." "Do you still love her, your wife?" "Every day, even though she's gone. Maybe especially because she's gone." He poked at the fire. "But I'm learning that love doesn't end just because someone dies. It just changes shape, becomes something you carry instead of something you share." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft against the windows. "I should let you sleep," Lena said eventually. "You've had a long day." "So have you." Daniel stood with her. "Margaret will take good care of you tomorrow. She's tough, but fair. Don't let her intimidate you." "I'll try not to." Lena paused at the stairs. "Daniel? Thank you. Not just for today, but for seeing me last night, for stopping when everyone else walked by. Thank you for letting me help, for giving me a way to keep my promise." Upstairs, Lena lay in bed again, listening to the quiet sounds of the house settling. Somewhere down the hall, she heard Daniel moving around, getting ready for bed. Below, the old furnace kicked on with a familiar rattle. She thought about Emma's words. "The house feels less sad." Maybe that was what healing looked like. Not erasing the sadness, but making room for other things beside it. Joy and grief, existing together. Loss and hope, sharing the same space. Her phone, which she'd turned off the night before, sat on the nightstand. She'd been avoiding it, afraid of what she might find. Messages from Richard, anger, gloating. She picked it up and turned it on. 3 missed calls from her sister, Beth, 2 voicemails, 1 text. Richard called me, said you had a breakdown and ran off. Are you okay? Where are you? A breakdown. That's what he was calling it. Not abandonment, not cruelty. A breakdown, as if she were the problem. As if her perfectly reasonable response to being discarded was evidence of instability. She typed back, I'm safe. I'll call you tomorrow. Then she turned the phone off again. Tomorrow was soon enough for that conversation. Tonight, she just wanted to exist in this unexpected sanctuary, surrounded by the kindness of strangers who'd become something more. Sleep came easier than it had the night before. The bed felt familiar now, the sounds of the house comforting rather than foreign. And when she dreamed, it wasn't of Richard or divorce papers or frozen bus stations. She dreamed of firelight and children's laughter and a man with sad eyes who'd chosen kindness when he could have chosen to walk away. She dreamed of possibility. The next morning, Lena dressed carefully for her meeting with Margaret Chen. Emma had helped her pick out clothes the night before, tailored pants and a burgundy sweater that brought out the color in her cheeks. You look professional, Emma said approvingly, like someone who means business. I feel like I'm playing dress-up, Lena admitted. Fake it till you make it. That's what Mom used to say. Daniel drove her to Margaret's office in downtown. The law firm occupied the 10th floor of a glass building, all sleek lines and expensive furniture. Lena felt out of place immediately. Margaret Chen turned out to be a petite woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper wardrobe. She shook Lena's hand firmly and gestured to a chair. Daniel tells me you need help with a divorce settlement, she said without preamble. Let's see what we're working with. Lena handed over the crumpled papers she'd retrieved from her purse. Margaret read through them quickly, her expression growing darker with each page. This is garbage, she said finally. Excuse me? This settlement. It's completely one-sided. You get nothing. No spousal support, no division of assets, no claim to the marital home or joint accounts. Did you have representation when you signed this? No. Richard's lawyer prepared everything. Of course he did. Margaret leaned back in her chair. How long were you married? 5 years. And you gave up your career to be a homemaker? I was a teacher, but yes, Richard wanted me to focus on trying to get pregnant, so I stopped working. And the reason for divorce? Lena's throat tightened. I'm infertile. He wanted children. I couldn't give them to him. Margaret's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was. Is. Well, here's the good news. This settlement isn't final yet. You signed under duress without representation, and it's unconscionable on its face. We can challenge it. I don't want his money, Lena said. I just want to move on. Moving on requires resources. You need time to get back on your feet, find work, secure housing. Spousal support isn't a handout. It's compensation for the years you invested in that marriage. You earned it. How much time are we talking about? Given the length of the marriage and your circumstances, probably 2 to 3 years of support, plus division of any joint assets, the house, cars, retirement accounts. It could give you enough cushion to rebuild your life. Lena thought about it. The idea of taking anything from Richard felt wrong, like admitting she couldn't survive without him. But Margaret was right. She needed resources. She needed time. Okay, she said finally. What do I need to do? Margaret smiled. Sign some paperwork, let me do my job, and trust that you deserve better than what that man offered you. They spent the next hour going through details. Bank statements Lena would need to retrieve, a timeline of the marriage, documentation of her career sacrifice. Margaret's questions were thorough, but not unkind. And by the end, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Empowered. I'll file a motion to set aside the settlement agreement, Margaret said as they finished. Expect pushback from Richard's attorney, but we've got a strong case. In the meantime, stay where you are. Daniel mentioned you're with him? Just temporarily, Lena said quickly. However long you need. It's important that you have stability right now. Margaret walked her to the door. One more thing, Lena. This isn't your fault. Your marriage failed because your husband chose to end it, not because you couldn't have children. Don't let him make you believe otherwise. The words settled over Lena like a benediction. She'd been carrying so much shame, so much guilt, that she'd almost forgotten the simple truth. Richard had made a choice. She hadn't failed. He had. Daniel was waiting in the lobby, reading on his phone. He looked up when she approached. "How did it go?" "She says we can challenge the settlement, that I might be entitled to support." "Good. That's good." They drove back in comfortable silence. Lena watched the city pass, seeing it differently now. Yesterday it had felt hostile, cold. Today it looked like possibility. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Why did you wear your wedding ring last night, when you found me?" Daniel glanced at his left hand where the gold band still sat. "I haven't taken it off since Kate died. The kids notice things like that. I think it makes them feel like she's still with us somehow. But it must be hard, for you." "Everything's hard, but some hard things are worth it." When they got home, Sophie was waiting at the door, her rabbit clutched tight. "Lena, you came back." "Of course I did," Lena said, kneeling down. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Sometimes people leave and don't come back," Sophie said seriously. "Like Mommy." The simple statement broke Lena's heart. She pulled the little girl into a hug, feeling the small body relax against her. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm right here." And in that moment, holding this child who'd lost her mother, wearing a dead woman's clothes, in a house that wasn't hers, Lena realized something profound. She was exactly where she needed to be. Over the next 3 weeks, Lena found herself settling into a rhythm she hadn't known she was capable of creating. She woke early, before the children, and made breakfast while coffee percolated in the machine Daniel had shown her how to use. She packed lunches with notes tucked inside, small encouragements that made Emma roll her eyes but smile, that made James read aloud to his friends, that made Sophie carry around in her pocket all day. She wasn't trying to replace their mother. She knew that was impossible, and she wouldn't have wanted to even if it weren't. But she could be present. She could show up. She could offer the kind of steady care that came from understanding what it meant to need someone and have them actually be there. Daniel worked from home most days, his office door open so he could hear the chaos of family life continuing around him. He ran a tech consulting firm, something to do with artificial intelligence and machine learning that Lena didn't fully understand but found fascinating when he tried to explain it. He'd built the company from nothing after his wife died, he told her one evening, because he needed something to focus on besides grief. "Turns out I'm pretty good at solving problems when they're not my own," he'd said with a wry smile. Lena had started to notice things about him, the way he always made sure the kids felt heard, even when he was exhausted, the way he still set a place for his wife at Sunday dinners before catching himself and quietly removing the plate, the way he looked at Lena sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching, with curiosity maybe, or something else she couldn't quite name. She noticed too that she was starting to heal, not completely, not all at once, but in small ways. She could think about Richard now without feeling like she was drowning. She could see pregnant women in the grocery store without wanting to cry. She could imagine a future that didn't revolve around the family she'd failed to create. Margaret called regularly with updates. Richard's attorney was pushing back hard against the motion to set aside the settlement, claiming Lena had signed willingly and understood the terms. Margaret was building a case that would prove otherwise, documenting the emotional state Lena had been in, the lack of independent counsel, the unconscionable nature of the agreement. "He's scared," Margaret said during one call. "Which means we're winning." But on a Tuesday afternoon in early January, everything shifted. Lena was helping Sophie with a puzzle when Daniel's phone rang. She watched his expression change as he listened, his jaw tightening, his eyes growing distant. "I understand," he said finally. "Yes, I'll handle it. Thank you for letting me know." He hung up and sat down heavily on the couch. Sophie abandoned her puzzle and climbed into his lap, sensing something was wrong. "What is it?" Lena asked. "That was my business partner, Kevin, the company we've been trying to acquire. The deal fell through, but there's another opportunity. In Seattle." Lena's stomach dropped. "Seattle? It's a major contract, could triple our revenue, set us up for the next decade. But I'd need to relocate, at least for the first year, maybe longer." "What about the kids?" Emma asked from the doorway. She'd been listening, Lena realized. "What about school? Our friends?" "I know," Daniel said quietly. It's not ideal. It's not ideal? Emma's voice rose. Dad, we can't move. This is home. Mom is here. Mom isn't here anymore, Emma. The words were gentle but firm. Emma's face crumpled. Her grave is here. Her garden is here. All our memories are here. We can't just leave. We might not have a choice. The business needs this. Then maybe the business isn't as important as you think it is, Emma shot back before running upstairs. A door slammed. James had appeared too, his face pale behind his glasses. Are we really moving? I don't know yet, Daniel said. I need to think about it. Sophie started crying, and Daniel held her close, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. Lena felt like an intruder witnessing this family crisis, but she couldn't make herself leave. Maybe I should give you some privacy, she said. No, Daniel said quickly. Stay, please. So she stayed, sitting quietly while Daniel comforted his children, while James peppered him with logical questions about timelines and logistics, while Sophie cried herself to sleep in his arms. When the kids had finally scattered to their rooms, Daniel looked at Lena with exhausted eyes. I don't know what to do, he admitted. The right answer for the business is obvious, but the right answer for my family... What does your heart say? Lena asked. My heart says stay. Keep them in the home they know, near their mother's memory, in the life we've built. But my head says that's selfish, that I'm putting my own fear of change above their long-term security. Is it really about security, or is it about proving something? Daniel looked at her sharply. What do you mean? You said you built the company after Kate died because you needed to focus on something besides grief. Maybe you're still doing that. Maybe this contract feels like validation that you're doing okay, that you're succeeding, that you haven't failed them. The truth in her words landed like a blow. Daniel stood and walked to the window, staring out at the snow-covered yard. She made me promise not to let grief make me small, he said quietly. But maybe I've been using work to avoid dealing with it at all. Maybe I've been running. I don't think running is the right word. Surviving, maybe. Coping. What about you? Turned to face her. What would you do? Lena considered the question. A month ago, she would have had no answer. A month ago, she'd been ready to let the cold take her. But something had shifted. She'd found something here. Not just shelter, but purpose. Connection. A reason to keep going. I think about what you actually want, she said. Not what you think you should want. Not what makes sense on paper. What would make you happy? I don't know if I remember how to think about happiness, Daniel admitted. Since Kate died, it's just been about getting through each day, making sure the kids are okay, keeping everything together. Maybe it's time to do more than just keep things together. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Daniel's phone rang again. He glanced at the screen and sighed. It's Kevin. I should take this. Lena nodded and went upstairs. She found Emma in her room, lying on her bed with headphones on, deliberately shutting out the world. Lena knocked gently on the door frame. Emma pulled off the headphones. I don't want to talk about it, she said. Okay, can I just sit with you? Emma shrugged, which Lena took as permission. She sat on the edge of the bed, not saying anything. After a few minutes, Emma spoke. It's not fair. No, it's not. We already lost Mom. Now we're supposed to lose our home too? Our school? Everything? Your dad hasn't decided anything yet. But he will. He always does what makes sense for the business. That's how he is. I think you might be selling him short, Lena said gently. I've watched him with you and your siblings. He's not making decisions based on business. He's making them based on love. Then why would he even consider moving? Because he's scared. Because he thinks providing for you financially is the same as protecting you. Because he's doing the best he can with impossible choices. Emma was quiet, absorbing this. Do you think we should move? I think that's not my decision to make. This is your family, not mine. You feel like family, Emma said quietly. You've been here more than some of my aunts and uncles ever were. The words hit Lena hard. She'd been so careful not to overstep, not to assume a place she hadn't earned. But here was Emma, offering acceptance Lena hadn't dared hope for. That means a lot to me, Lena said. More than you know. So what happens to you if we move? Where would you go? Lena hadn't let herself think about that. In 3 weeks, she'd built a life here, fragile and temporary, but real. The thought of losing it made her chest tighten. I'll figure something out, she said. I always do. But Emma heard the uncertainty in her voice. You could come with us. Emma, I'm serious. You're already helping with the house and the cooking and everything. Why couldn't you come? Because it's not that simple. Why not? Because Lena was already too attached. Because every morning she woke up in this house felt like a gift she didn't deserve. Because the way Daniel looked at her sometimes made her feel things she had no right to feel. Because she was falling in love with this family, and that was terrifying. Because your dad might not want that, she said instead. You could ask him. Maybe, but not today. Today we just deal with one thing at a time. That night, after the kids were in bed, Lena found Daniel in the kitchen nursing a glass of whiskey. He looked older than he had that morning, worn down by impossible decisions. How are they? He asked. Scared, angry, confused, the usual emotions when your world is being turned upside down. I know the feeling. He poured a second glass and slid it toward her. Do you drink? Not usually, but tonight seems like a good night to start. They drank in silence. The whiskey burned going down, but it was a good burn, a reminder that she could still feel. Kevin wants an answer by Friday, Daniel said finally. 3 days to decide whether to uproot my entire family. What are you leaning toward? Honestly, I don't know. The money is significant, the opportunity is real, but Emma's face when I told her, she'll forgive you either way, Lena said. Kids are resilient like that. Are they? Or do we just tell ourselves that so we feel better about the ways we fail them? You're not failing them. Aren't I? Their mother died, and I've been so busy trying to hold everything together that I haven't stopped to ask if together is where they want to be. Lena set down her glass. Can I tell you something from the outside looking in? Please. You're one of the best fathers I've ever seen. You listen to them. You make space for their grief. You show up every single day, even when you're exhausted. Even when you're drowning in your own pain. That's not failing. That's love. Daniel's eyes were bright. You don't know how much I needed to hear that. Then I'm glad I said it. They sat together, the silence comfortable now. Outside, snow fell again, endless and gentle. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Of course. What are you going to do? After the legal stuff is settled, after you get back on your feet. Have you thought about it? Lena had thought about it. Late at night, when sleep wouldn't come, she'd imagined possibilities. Going back to teaching, finding her own apartment, building a life that was entirely hers. But she'd also imagined staying, being part of this family in some capacity. Watching Emma grow up, helping James with his homework, reading bedtime stories to Sophie, having coffee with Daniel in the morning, sharing the small moments that made up a life. I don't know, she said honestly. A month ago, I couldn't imagine a future at all. Now I can imagine too many, and I don't know which one is real. What does your heart want? The same question she'd asked him earlier now turned back on her. What did her heart want? It wanted this. These people. This feeling of belonging. But she couldn't say that. She had no claim to this family, no right to insert herself into their future. My heart wants a lot of things it can't have, she said carefully. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, and Lena felt something shift in the air between them. Something unspoken but present, like the moment before lightning strikes. Lena, he started. But his phone rang again, shattering the moment. He glanced at the screen and sighed. I'm sorry. I have to take this. He stepped out of the room, and Lena sat alone with her whiskey and her thoughts. She could hear Daniel's voice in the other room, professional and controlled, discussing numbers and timelines and logistics. The voice of a man who'd built something from nothing, who knew how to make hard decisions, who understood that sometimes you had to sacrifice one thing to protect another. When he came back, his expression had changed, hardened. I'm going to do it, he said. Take the contract. We'll move to Seattle. Lena's heart sank, but she kept her face neutral. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The kids will adjust, they're strong, and the financial security, I can't pass that up, not when their future depends on it. Have you told them? Not yet. I'll tell them tomorrow. He finished his whiskey in one swallow. Thank you for listening, for being here, for everything. Of course. But as Lena went upstairs to bed, she felt the loss already settling into her bones. In a few weeks, maybe a month, this family would pack up their lives and leave. And she would be alone again, back to figuring out who she was without them. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling and let herself cry quietly. For the second time in a month, she was losing a life before she'd really had a chance to live it. The next morning, Daniel gathered the children in the living room. Lena stayed in the kitchen, giving them privacy, but she could hear every word. I've made a decision about Seattle, he said. We're going to take the contract. We'll move at the end of the school year. Silence. Then Sophie's small voice. But I don't want to leave. I know, sweetheart, but sometimes we have to do hard things. Like when Mom died? James asked quietly. Yes, like that. Emma's voice was cold. This is different. Mom didn't choose to leave. You're choosing this. Emma? No. You always talk about how we're a team, how we make decisions together, but you didn't ask us. You just decided. Because I'm the parent. Because this is what's best for our family. How do you know what's best? You're not the only one in this family. Lena heard footsteps stomping upstairs, another slammed door. Daniel sighed heavily. James, Sophie, can you give me a minute? The younger children scattered. Lena waited a moment, then brought Daniel coffee. He accepted it gratefully. That went well, he said bitterly. She's scared. She'll come around. Will she? I'm not so sure. He rubbed his face. Maybe I am making a mistake. Maybe I should turn it down. You can't make a decision this big based on whether a 12-year-old approves. She's not just a 12-year-old, she's my daughter. And she's right. I didn't ask them, I just decided. Because you're trying to protect them. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just too scared to stay still. Too scared to stop moving, stop building, stop proving that I can handle this. Lena sat beside him. Do you want to know what I think? Always. I think you should ask yourself what Kate would say. Not about the business, but about the choice you're making. Would she want you to uproot the kids for financial security? Or would she want you to keep them grounded in the life you built together? Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he stood abruptly. I need to make a call. He went into his office and closed the door. Lena cleaned up breakfast, helped Sophie get dressed, checked on James, who was reading in his room. She knocked on Emma's door, but the girl called out that she wanted to be alone. An hour later, Daniel emerged. His expression was different, lighter, maybe, relieved. I turned it down, he said. Lena's breath caught. What? The Seattle contract. I called Kevin and told him to pursue it without me, that I'm stepping back from the partnership. Daniel, I know what you're going to say, that it's a huge opportunity, that I'm making a mistake, but you were right. Kate wouldn't want this. She'd want the kids to have stability, to grow up in the home we made together, to have roots. I wasn't going to say it was a mistake, Lena said softly. I was going to say I'm proud of you. He looked at her, really looked at her, and something passed between them, something that had been building for weeks, hovering at the edges of every conversation, every shared glance. I need to tell the kids, he said. But he didn't move. Neither did Lena. They stood in the kitchen, close enough to touch, the air between them electric. Lena, Daniel said quietly, I need to tell you something. Her heart was pounding. Okay. These past few weeks, having you here, it's been more than just helpful. It's been, I don't know how to explain it, like the house is alive again, like we're a family again. Daniel, I know this is complicated. I know you're still dealing with your divorce, that you're figuring out your own life, but I need you to know that you're not just a guest here. You're, Dad? They sprang apart. Emma stood in the doorway, her expression cautious. I'm sorry I yelled, she said. I'm sorry I didn't ask you, Daniel replied. And I want you to know, we're not moving. I turned down the Seattle contract. Emma's face transformed. Really? Really? You were right. We're a team, and this team stays together. Emma launched herself at her father, and he caught her, holding her tight. Over Emma's shoulder, his eyes found Lena's. Later, when the children were celebrating with hot chocolate and elaborate plans for what they'd do with their summer now that they weren't moving, Daniel found Lena alone in the guest room. "We should finish that conversation," he said. "Should we?" "I think so." Lena's hands were shaking. "Okay. I was going to say that you're not just a guest here. You're part of this family. The kids love you, and I—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I care about you. More than I probably should, given the circumstances." I care about you too," Lena whispered. "All of you. But I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of this being temporary. Of building something that gets taken away. Of wanting something I don't deserve." Daniel stepped closer. "Why wouldn't you deserve it?" "Because I'm broken. Because I failed at marriage. Because I can't give you children." "Lena, look at me." He waited until she met his eyes. "You're not broken. You're healing. And I don't need more children. I need someone who sees me, who helps me be better, who makes this house feel like a home again." "I don't want to replace her," Lena said. "Kate, you couldn't. No one could. But maybe that's not what this is. Maybe this is something new, something we build together." The possibility hung between them, fragile and bright. Lena thought about the woman she'd been a month ago, freezing on that bench, convinced her story was over. And she thought about the woman she was becoming, someone who cooked breakfast, who helped with homework, who belonged somewhere. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I." "What if I mess this up? What if you don't?" And there it was, the question that mattered. What if she didn't mess it up? What if she let herself have this? What if she chose hope over fear? She reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Okay. Let's try." Daniel smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd known him. And Lena felt something shift inside her, a door opening, light streaming in. They didn't tell the children right away. It felt too new, too fragile to expose to scrutiny. Instead, Lena and Daniel moved carefully around each other, learning the shape of this thing growing between them. He started joining her for coffee in the mornings before the kids woke up, their conversations ranging from mundane details about grocery lists to deeper questions about what they wanted from life. She noticed the way he looked at her had changed, less like someone observing a house guest and more like someone seeing a partner. But the legal reality of Lena's situation hadn't changed. 2 weeks after Daniel turned down the Seattle contract, Margaret called with news that shifted everything again. "Richard wants to settle," she said without preamble. Lena was folding laundry in the guest room, Sophie's small dresses mixed with her borrowed clothes. She sat down on the bed, phone pressed to her ear. "What does that mean?" "It means his attorney reached out. They're willing to negotiate spousal support and asset division. He doesn't want this going to court." "Why not?" Margaret's laugh was dry. "Because discovery would reveal some things he'd rather keep private. Turns out your ex-husband has been seeing someone for the past 6 months, while you were still married." The words took a moment to land. Richard had been cheating, while she'd been desperately trying to get pregnant, undergoing painful treatments, blaming her body for their failures. He'd been with someone else. "Lena, are you there?" "I'm here." Her voice sounded far away. "Who is she?" "Does it matter?" It didn't, Lena realized. She felt anger, yes, but also something unexpected, relief. Because it meant the divorce hadn't been about her inadequacy. It had been about his dishonesty, his cowardice, his willingness to blame her for problems he'd created. "What's he offering?" she asked. 3 years of spousal support, declining over time, half the value of the house, his car, access to joint savings. It's not perfect, but it's fair. "I want it done," Lena said. "Whatever gets me out of this marriage fastest. I'll draw up the paperwork, but Lena, you should feel good about this. You're getting what you deserve." After she hung up, Lena sat with the knowledge. Richard had betrayed her long before he'd handed her those divorce papers. The infertility had just been a convenient excuse, a way to make his leaving seem justified rather than cruel. She should have felt devastated. Instead, she felt liberated. Daniel found her an hour later, still sitting on the bed, surrounded by half-folded laundry. "Margaret called," she said. "Richard wants to settle." "That's good news, isn't it? He was cheating on me for months. While I was falling apart trying to give him a baby he apparently didn't even want from me." Daniel sat beside her. "I'm sorry." "I'm not. Is that terrible?" "I should be angry, but mostly I just feel free, like I can finally stop blaming myself." "You should never have blamed yourself to begin with." "I know that now." She looked at him. "But I didn't know it a month ago. You helped me see it." "You helped yourself. I just gave you a safe place to do it." They sat in silence, shoulders touching. Then Sophie appeared in the doorway, rabbit in hand. "Why are you sad?" she asked Lena. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm actually happy." "Then why do you look like you're going to cry?" "Sometimes people cry when they're happy too." Sophie considered this, then climbed onto the bed between them. "I cried when Daddy said we weren't moving. Happy crying." "Exactly like that," Lena said, pulling her close. Daniel watched them, his expression soft. Then James appeared too, asking about lunch, and the moment dissolved into the ordinary chaos of family life. But something had shifted. Lena felt it in the way Daniel's hand lingered on her shoulder as he passed, in the way the children automatically included her in their plans, in the way the house felt less like temporary shelter and more like home. That evening, after dinner, Daniel asked Lena to take a walk with him. The February air was cold but clear, the sky turning purple as the sun set. They walked through the neighborhood in comfortable silence, their breath forming clouds. "I've been thinking," Daniel said finally, "about what happens next." "With us?" "With everything. Your settlement will come through soon. You'll have resources to start over, find your own place, rebuild your life." Lena's chest tightened. "I know. But I don't want you to go." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "What?" "I don't want you to go," he repeated. "The kids don't want you to go. And I—" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated with himself. "I'm doing this badly. I rehearsed a whole speech and now I can't remember any of it. Daniel, let me just say this, okay? Before I lose my nerve." He took her hands in his. "When Kate died, I thought that was it for me. That I'd had my chance at love and lost it. And all that was left was raising the kids and getting through each day. But then you showed up, freezing on that bench, and everything changed." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "You brought life back into this house," he continued. "Not just because you cook and clean and help with homework, but because you care. Because you see the kids for who they are. Because you make me want to be better, not just for them, but for myself." He paused. "I'm falling in love with you, Lena. Maybe I already have. And I know it's complicated and the timing is terrible, but I needed you to know." "The timing isn't terrible," Lena whispered. "It's perfect." "Is it?" "A month ago, I was ready to die. Now I'm standing here with you and I can imagine a future again. How is that anything but perfect?" Daniel cupped her face in his hands. "Can I kiss you?" Instead of answering, Lena closed the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape of this new thing. Then it deepened, became something more certain. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "Wow," Daniel said. "Yeah," Lena agreed. They walked back hand in hand, not saying much, just being together. But when they reached the house, Emma was watching from the window. She disappeared before they got inside. Lena found her later in her room, pretending to do homework. "You kissed my dad," Emma said without looking up. "I did." "Are you going to leave like Mom did?" The question gutted Lena. She sat on the edge of Emma's bed. "Your mom didn't choose to leave. She would have stayed if she could. But you could leave. You could decide this is too hard, or too complicated, or that you don't really want us after all." "Emma, look at me." Lena waited until the girl met her eyes. "I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you want me to." "What if I do want you to?" Emma's voice was small, scared. "What if I'm not ready for Dad to be with someone else?" "Then we'll slow down. Your feelings matter more than anything else. Really? Really? Your dad and we're not trying to rush into anything. We're just figuring out what this could be. But if it makes you uncomfortable, we'll pump the brakes. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "It doesn't make me uncomfortable. It makes me scared." "Of what?" "That I'll start to love you, and then you'll leave, and I'll have to miss another person forever." Lena felt tears slide down her cheeks. "Oh, Emma." Mom used to say that loving people was worth the risk of losing them, that it was better to love hard and hurt hard than to never love at all. But I don't know if I believe that anymore. "I think your mom was right," Lena said gently, "but I also think you get to decide when you're ready to risk it again. There's no timeline, no pressure." Emma wiped her own eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you love him, my dad?" Lena thought about lying, about protecting Emma from the truth. But this girl deserved honesty. "Yes," she said. "I do." "Does he make you happy?" "He does. You all do." Emma nodded slowly, processing. "Okay, then I guess it's okay." "Are you sure?" "No, but Mom also used to say that being sure was overrated, that sometimes you just had to try things and see what happened." Lena smiled through her tears. "Your mom was very wise." "I know." Emma hesitated, then said, "Can I hug you?" "Always." They held each other, and Lena felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This family, this love, this second chance, it was all real. The next few weeks brought changes that felt both monumental and natural. Margaret finalized the settlement with Richard, and suddenly Lena had money in an account with only her name on it. 3 years of support, plus her half of the house sale. It was enough to start over, to build something new. But she didn't want to leave. She and Daniel talked about it late one night after the kids were asleep. They'd fallen into a routine of sitting together in the living room after dinner, sharing wine and conversation, slowly building intimacy. "The settlement came through," she said. "I know. Margaret told me. I could get my own place now, start looking for teaching jobs for next fall." Daniel set down his glass. "Is that what you want?" "No, but I don't want to assume I can stay either. This is your home, your family. I don't want to impose." "Lena, you're not imposing. You're—" He paused, searching for the right words. "You're part of us now. The kids would be devastated if you left. I would be devastated. But what would that look like? Me staying? However you want it to look. You could keep the guest room, maintain your independence, or—" He hesitated. "Or we could acknowledge what this is becoming and make it official." "Official how?" "Move into my room, be my partner. Not just in front of the kids, but in every way that matters." Lena's heart was racing. "That's a big step." "It is. And if you're not ready, I understand. But I'm ready, Lena. I'm ready to build a life with you." She thought about the woman she'd been 2 months ago, sitting on that frozen bench with divorce papers in her hand. She'd thought her story was ending, but it had just been beginning. "I'm ready too," she said. Daniel's smile was brilliant. He pulled her close and kissed her, and Lena felt herself falling into something she'd stopped believing existed, a love that wasn't conditional, that didn't require her to be anything other than herself. They told the kids at Sunday breakfast. Lena had cooked pancakes, and Daniel had made his famous scrambled eggs, and the kitchen was full of easy laughter when he cleared his throat. "Kids, Lena and I want to talk to you about something." The laughter stopped. 3 pairs of eyes turned to them, suddenly wary. "Are you leaving?" Sophie asked Lena, her voice small. "No, sweetheart. The opposite, actually." Lena took a deep breath. "If it's okay with you, I'd like to stay. Not as a guest, but well, as part of the family." "Like you'd live here forever?" James asked. "If that's okay with everyone." "Are you and Dad getting married?" Emma's tone was carefully neutral. "Not yet," Daniel said. "We're not rushing into anything, but yes, we're together. And Lena will be moving into my room." Silence. Lena held her breath, waiting for objections, for tears, for rejection. Then Sophie said, "Can I still come to your room for snuggles in the morning?" "Of course you can," Lena said, relief flooding through her. "And you'll still help me with my science project?" James asked. "Absolutely." Emma was the last to speak. "Mom would like you," she said finally. "I think she'd be glad Dad found you." "Thank you," Lena whispered. "That means everything." "But if you hurt him, I'll never forgive you," Emma added, her voice fierce. "Fair enough. And if he hurts you, tell me and I'll yell at him." "Deal." Daniel laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. "Are we good then? Everyone okay with this?" The kids nodded, and breakfast resumed, the moment sliding back into ordinary family chaos. But Lena caught Daniel's eye across the table, and they shared a look of perfect understanding. They were going to be okay. All of them. That afternoon, Lena moved her few belongings from the guest room to Daniel's bedroom. It didn't take long, she still owned so little. But Daniel had cleared space in his closet, emptied drawers in his dresser, made room for her in tangible ways. She stood in the doorway, looking at the room that would now be hers too. There was a photo of Catherine on the nightstand, smiling in the garden with dirt on her hands and joy on her face. "We can move that if it bothers you," Daniel said from behind her. "No, she belongs here. She's part of this family too." "Are you sure?" "I'm not trying to erase her or replace her. I'm just adding myself to the story." Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind. "How did I get so lucky?" "I think I'm the lucky one. We can both be lucky." They stood like that for a while, watching snow fall outside the window, listening to the kids play downstairs. Lena thought about all the ways a life could break and rebuild, how loss and love could coexist, how endings could become beginnings if you were brave enough to let them. But that evening, everything changed again. Lena was making dinner when her phone rang. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Lena Moore?" "Yes?" "This is Jennifer Hartley from Lincoln Elementary School. I got your application for our 5th grade teaching position." Lena's mind went blank. She hadn't applied to any teaching jobs. Then she remembered she'd updated her resume weeks ago, sent out a few inquiries back when she'd still thought she'd be getting her own place. "Oh, yes, thank you for calling. I'd like to bring you in for an interview. Your references are excellent, and we're looking for someone who can start after spring break. Would Tuesday work?" Lena looked at Daniel across the kitchen. He was helping Sophie with homework, his reading glasses perched on his nose, completely absorbed in whatever math problem they were solving. This was her life now, here, with them. But teaching was what she'd loved before Richard. It was the career she'd abandoned to chase the impossible dream of motherhood. Maybe it could be part of her life again. Not instead of this family, but alongside it. "Tuesday works," she said. "What time?" She got the interview details and hung up. Daniel looked up questioningly. "That was a school," she explained, "about a teaching job." "That's wonderful," he said, but she heard the uncertainty in his voice. "It's part-time, 5th grade. I could be home when the kids get here, still do everything I'm doing now." "You don't have to justify it to me. If you want to teach again, you should." "But?" "No buts. I want you to have everything you want." But Lena heard what he didn't say. The fear that if she had her own career, her own income, she might not need this family anymore. That she might realize she could make it on her own and choose to leave. She crossed the room and took his face in her hands. "I'm not going anywhere. Teaching doesn't change that, okay?" "Okay," he said, but the worry didn't quite leave his eyes. The interview on Tuesday went better than Lena expected. The principal, Mrs. Hartley, was warm and enthusiastic. The school was small but well-funded, with a focus on creative teaching methods and individualized learning. The job would be 3 days a week, covering for a teacher on extended medical leave. "We'd need you to start in 2 weeks," Mrs. Hartley said. "Is that doable?" "Yes," Lena heard herself say. "Absolutely." She got the job offer that same afternoon. When she told Daniel, he swept her into his arms and spun her around the kitchen. "I'm so proud of you," he said. "It's just a part-time position. It's you getting your life back. That's huge." The kids were excited too. Emma wanted to know if Lena would tell her class about them. James asked if she'd teach science or just regular stuff. Sophie drew her a picture of a teacher with a crown, because teachers were like royalty, apparently. But that night, after everyone was asleep, Daniel found Lena on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. Can't sleep? He asked. Too much in my head. He sat beside her. Want to share? I'm scared, she admitted. Everything is going so well. The job, us, the kids. It feels too good to be true. So you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. Aren't you? Sometimes, he admitted. After Kate died, I spent 2 years waiting for the next terrible thing. It was exhausting. How did you stop? I realized I was so busy protecting myself from future pain that I was missing the present joy. The kids needed a father who showed up, not one who was constantly braced for disaster. I don't want to do that, Lena said, but I don't know how to trust that this is real. It is real, and we're going to mess up sometimes and have hard days and struggle, but we're doing it together. Promise? Promise. They sat in the cold, holding hands until the chill drove them inside. But as they climbed the stairs to bed, Lena felt something release in her chest. Maybe trust wasn't about knowing everything would be okay. Maybe it was about choosing to believe it could be, even when you were scared. Her first day teaching was both terrifying and exhilarating. The kids were energetic and curious, full of questions and ideas. Lena found herself falling back into old rhythms, the way she structured lessons, the tone of voice she used to get their attention, the patience required to help struggling students. By the end of the day, she was exhausted but happy. She came home to find Daniel making dinner with the kids, the kitchen full of their usual chaos. Sophie ran to hug her. James wanted to know everything about her day. Emma set an extra place at the table without being asked. How was it? Daniel asked, kissing her hello. Perfect, Lena said. Hard, but perfect. That's life, isn't it? Hard, but perfect. As they sat down to dinner, Lena looked around the table at these people who'd become her family. Emma, fierce and protective. James, curious and kind. Sophie, loving and open. Daniel, steady and true. This was her life now. Not the one she'd planned, not the one she'd mourned losing, but something better. Something she'd built from the ashes of her old life. What are you smiling about? Sophie asked. Just thinking about how lucky I am, Lena said. We're lucky too, Sophie said seriously, because you didn't freeze that night. The words hung in the air. Daniel reached for Lena's hand under the table and squeezed. No, Lena agreed. I didn't freeze. I found home instead. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, when she said the word home, she knew exactly what it meant. Spring came early that year, bringing with it a warmth that felt like permission to finally breathe. Lena had been teaching for 6 weeks, and the rhythm of her days had settled into something comfortable. She woke beside Daniel, made breakfast for the family, drove to school 3 days a week, and came home to homework help and dinner preparations. On her days off, she volunteered in Sophie's kindergarten class and helped James prepare for the science fair. She attended Emma's play rehearsals and cheered louder than anyone when her stepdaughter delivered her lines as narrator. Stepdaughter. The word had slipped into her vocabulary naturally, though no legal documents made it official. The children had started introducing her to their friends' parents as our Lena, a designation that made her chest tight with emotion every time. But there were still complications. Richard had signed the settlement papers, but his attorney kept finding reasons to delay the final processing. Margaret assured Lena it was just bureaucratic nonsense, but the limbo felt precarious. She was building a life with Daniel while still technically married to another man. And then there was the question neither she nor Daniel had directly addressed. What happened next? Were they going to get married? Did Lena even want to get married again after what Richard had put her through? Did the children need that formality? Or was what they had enough? The uncertainty crystallized one Saturday morning in March when Daniel's mother called. Lena was in the garden planting tomatoes with Sophie when she heard Daniel's voice through the open kitchen window. His tone was tense, defensive. Mom, it's not like that. She's not just... No, listen to me. Lena is part of this family. A pause. Lena couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she could imagine it from the way Daniel's shoulders hunched. I don't care what it looks like. The kids love her. I love her. That should be enough. Another pause, longer this time. You haven't even met her. How can you... He stopped, listening. Then his voice went cold. If that's how you feel, then maybe you shouldn't visit after all. He hung up and stood at the window, gripping the counter. Lena caught his eye through the glass. He looked miserable. "Who was that?" Sophie asked, oblivious to the tension. "Grandma," Lena said quietly. "Why don't you go wash your hands, sweetheart?" Sophie ran inside, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts. She'd known this conversation would come eventually. Daniel's parents lived in Arizona and hadn't visited since Catherine's funeral. According to Emma, they'd been devastated by their daughter-in-law's death and had pulled away from Daniel and the kids afterward, too consumed by their own grief to help with his. But now they wanted to visit, and they had opinions about Daniel's new relationship. Lena found Daniel still in the kitchen, staring at nothing. "I heard some of that," she said. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize. She's the one being unreasonable." "What did she say?" Daniel hesitated, then sighed. "That I'm dishonoring Kate's memory by moving on so quickly. That the kids need stability, not some woman they barely know playing house. That I should think about what's best for them instead of what's convenient for me." Each word landed like a blow. Lena had thought those same things about herself in darker moments. Was she dishonoring Catherine's memory? Was she disrupting the children's healing? Was she just a convenient solution to Daniel's loneliness? "Maybe she has a point," Lena said quietly. "She doesn't." Daniel turned to face her. "My mother loved Kate. They were close, and she's still so deep in her grief that she can't see that life has to continue. That the kids need more than just me trying to hold everything together. That I need more than just survival. But it has only been 2 years, and it could be 20 years and she'd still think it was too soon. Because to her, moving on means forgetting. But loving you doesn't mean I've forgotten Kate. It means I'm honoring what she taught me about keeping my heart open." Lena wanted to believe him, but doubt had crept in, cold and familiar. That evening, after the kids were in bed, they sat together on the couch. Daniel had been quiet all afternoon, and Lena knew he was still processing his mother's words. "Do you want me to meet her?" Lena asked. "When she visits?" "I told her not to come. Not if she's going to be cruel to you." "Daniel, she's your mother. You can't cut her off because of me." "I can if she won't respect my choices." "What about the kids? They deserve to see their grandmother." Daniel ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. "I know, but I can't have her coming here and making you feel unwelcome in your own home." "Your own home." The word settled over Lena like a blanket. This was her home. These were her people. And she needed to fight for that, not shrink away from conflict. "Let her come," Lena said. "I can handle it." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Daniel pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "You're braver than you think." "I'm terrified, actually, but I'm tired of running from hard things." His mother arrived 2 weeks later. Margaret Cross was a tall woman in her late 60s with silver hair and Catherine's blue eyes. She looked at Lena with barely concealed hostility when Daniel introduced them. "So you're the teacher," Margaret said, making the profession sound like an insult. "Yes, ma'am. It's nice to meet you." "Is it?" Margaret turned to Daniel. "Where are my grandchildren?" The visit was tense from the start. Margaret fawned over the kids, but ignored Lena entirely, acting as if she were invisible. When Lena cooked dinner, Margaret commented that it wasn't how Catherine used to make it. When Lena offered to help with dishes, Margaret said she'd rather do them herself, the way they should be done. Emma noticed immediately. At dinner the second night, she said, "Grandma, did you know Lena got Teacher of the Month at her school?" "How nice," Margaret said without looking at Lena. "And she's helping me with my science project. We're building a model of the solar system." "Your mother used to love astronomy," Margaret said pointedly. "I know. That's why Lena thought I'd like it." The correction was gentle but firm. Emma was defending Lena in the only way she knew how. James joined in too, talking about how Lena had helped him with his math homework. Sophie showed Margaret a drawing Lena had helped her make, but Margaret remained unmoved. On the third day, Lena overheard her talking to Daniel in his office. "She's nothing like Catherine. She's not supposed to be like Catherine. She's herself. The children need their mother, not some replacement." "Oh, their mother is dead, Mom. They know that. But they also need someone who shows up for them every day, who loves them unconditionally, who makes this house feel like a home again. Lena does all of that. She's convenient, that's all." "Stop." Daniel's voice was sharp. You don't get to come into my home and disrespect the woman I love. Lena has been nothing but kind to you, and you've treated her like she's invisible. Because I'm trying to protect you and those children, you're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was letting you come here when I knew you'd act like this. Lena heard footsteps and quickly moved away from the door, but she'd heard enough. She went to the garden, needing space to breathe, and found Emma already there, sitting on the bench. "Grandma's mean to you," Emma said without preamble. "She's grieving. She loved your mom." "So did we. But we're not mean to you." "That's different." "Why? Because we're kids?" Emma looked at her. "You know what I think? I think she's scared." "Of what?" "That if Dad loves you, it means he didn't really love Mom. That if we love you, we'll forget her." Emma picked at the grass. "But that's not how love works. Mom taught me that. She said love doesn't divide. It multiplies. That there's always room for more." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. "Your mom was very wise." "Yeah, and I think she'd want Dad to be happy. I think she'd like you." "Thank you," Lena whispered. That night, Margaret found Lena alone in the kitchen. Lena was preparing tomorrow's lunches, a task she'd done every night for the past 3 months. "We need to talk," Margaret said. Lena set down the knife she'd been using to cut sandwiches. "Okay. I don't like this situation. I don't like that my son is rushing into a relationship with someone he barely knows. I don't like that my grandchildren are getting attached to a woman who could leave at any moment. I'm not leaving." "You say that now, but what happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize that raising someone else's children is harder than you thought? When you want your own life instead of this borrowed one?" "This isn't a borrowed life. It's mine." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you've just stepped into Catherine's shoes, cooking her recipes, sleeping in her bed, raising her children. You're not building something new, you're just filling a space she left behind." The words hit harder because Lena had thought them herself. In the quiet moments, when doubt crept in, she'd wondered if she was just a convenient replacement, if Daniel loved her, or just the idea of not being alone. But then she thought about the way Daniel looked at her when she laughed, the way the children had claimed her as theirs, the way this house felt different with her in it, not because she was trying to be Catherine, but because she was unapologetically herself. "You're wrong," Lena said quietly. "I'm not trying to replace your daughter-in-law. I couldn't even if I wanted to. Catherine was unique and irreplaceable, and the children know that. But I'm not living in her shadow. I'm standing beside her memory, honoring what she built while creating something new." Pretty words, but words are easy. "You're right, so let me give you facts instead." Lena met Margaret's eyes. "I was thrown away by my husband because I couldn't give him children. I lost everything, my home, my identity, my sense of worth. I was sitting on a bench in the middle of winter, ready to let the cold take me when Daniel found me. He could have walked away. Everyone else did. But he didn't." Margaret's expression flickered, but she didn't interrupt. "He brought me here," Lena continued, "and his children, who had every reason to resent me, chose kindness instead. Emma taught me that loss doesn't mean you stop loving. James taught me that curiosity is a form of courage. Sophie taught me that trust can be rebuilt even after it's been broken. And Daniel," her voice caught, "Daniel taught me that I'm worthy of love even when I can't give someone what they want from me." "That's very touching," Margaret said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "I know you're afraid," Lena said, "afraid that if Daniel loves me, it diminishes what he had with Catherine. But love doesn't work that way. I'm not taking anything from her memory. I'm adding to this family's story, and I'm staying, whether you approve or not, because these people are mine now, and I'm theirs." Margaret was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Catherine used to make these sandwiches exactly this way. Cut diagonally, crusts on for James, crusts off for Sophie, extra turkey for Emma." "I know, Emma told me. She used to leave notes in their lunches too. Little encouragements." "I do that now." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I miss her so much." "I know you do. They all do. But missing her doesn't mean closing your heart to anyone else. It means honoring her by continuing what she started, building a family full of love." How do you know so much about loss when you're so young? I lost my mother to cancer when I was 19, my father to a heart attack 3 years later. I spent 5 years in a marriage trying to become someone I wasn't. And then I lost that too. Lena paused. I know loss, and I know that the only way through it is to keep loving anyway. Margaret wiped her eyes. I was cruel to you. Yes, you were. I'm sorry. I forgive you. They stood in the kitchen together, two women connected by their love for the same family, finding common ground in shared grief and hope. Can I ask you something? Margaret said. Of course. Do you make him happy? Really happy? I try to, and I think he makes me happy too. That's all Catherine would have wanted, for him to be happy, for the children to be loved. Margaret managed a small smile. She had good instincts about people. If she were here, I think she'd approve of you. That means more than you know. Daniel found them an hour later, talking over tea like old friends. His shock was almost comical. What happened? He asked. We came to an understanding, Margaret said. Turns out your Lena is tougher than she looks. I could have told you that. The rest of Margaret's visit was different. She still grieved Catherine. Lena saw it in the way she touched her daughter-in-law's favorite mug, in the way she paused at photos on the wall. But she made an effort with Lena, asking about her teaching, her past, her plans. On Margaret's last day, she pulled Lena aside. Take care of them, she said. My son, my grandchildren. They've been through enough. I will. And let them take care of you too. You've been through enough as well. After Margaret left, life settled back into its rhythm. But something had shifted. Lena felt more secure in her place here, less like a guest and more like she belonged. In April, Margaret sent Lena a package. Inside was a leather-bound journal and a note. Catherine kept journals her whole life. I found this one from when she was pregnant with Emma. I thought you might like to read it, to understand the woman whose shoes you're not trying to fill, but whose family you're helping carry forward. With love and respect, Margaret. Lena opened the journal with trembling hands. Catherine's handwriting was elegant, looping. I'm terrified I won't be a good mother. What if I mess this up? What if I'm not enough? The entry was dated 15 years ago, but it could have been written yesterday. Lena read on, finding page after page of Catherine's hopes and fears, her love for Daniel, her wonder at the children growing inside her. And then an entry from 6 months before she died. I'm not going to beat this. The doctors say there's still hope, but I can feel it. I'm leaving my babies. I'm leaving Daniel. And the unfairness of it makes me so angry I could scream. But then I think about what I want to leave behind, and it's not anger, it's love. I want them to remember that I loved them, and I want them to know that love doesn't end just because I do. I want Daniel to find someone else someday, someone who will love our children as fiercely as I do, someone who will make him laugh again. I want our family to continue, different but still whole. That's my legacy, not my death, but the love that survives it. Lena closed the journal and cried. For Catherine, who'd died too young. For Daniel, who'd lost his wife. For the children, who'd lost their mother. And for herself, who'd been given this impossible gift, a second chance to be part of something beautiful. That evening, she showed the entry to Daniel. He read it silently, tears streaming down his face. She knew, he whispered. She knew what I'd need. She loved you so much, and now I love you. Both things can be true. Both things are true. They held each other while the sun set outside their window, while the children played downstairs, while life continued in all its messy, beautiful complexity. In May, on a warm Saturday afternoon, Daniel proposed. It wasn't elaborate or planned. They were in the garden together, planting flowers. When he said, "Marry me," Lena looked up from the dirt, sure she'd misheard. What? Marry me, he repeated. I know it's only been a few months. I know we're still figuring things out. But I don't want to waste any more time. I want you to be my wife. I want the kids to be officially yours. I want to build a life with you that's legally recognized and completely ours. Daniel, I don't have a ring. I wasn't planning this, but I'm asking anyway because I love you, and I can't imagine my future without you in it. Lena's hands were shaking. What about the kids? Shouldn't we ask them? We already know their answer. Sophie's been planning your wedding for weeks. She has drawings. Despite herself, Lena laughed. Of course she does. So what do you say? I say yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want this family. Yes to all of it. Daniel pulled her up from the dirt and kissed her while the children, who'd apparently been watching from the window, erupted in cheers. They were married in August, in the backyard where Daniel had proposed. It was small, just family and close friends. Margaret came and cried through the whole ceremony. Emma was maid of honor, Sophie the flower girl, James the ring bearer. Daniel's best friend from college officiated. Lena wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers from the garden. Daniel wore a suit and couldn't stop smiling. When they exchanged vows, with Catherine's photo placed gently on a chair of honor, Lena promised to love not just Daniel but the children too, to honor the family that had come before while building the one they were creating together. I was lost, she said in her vows, broken and alone and ready to give up. But you found me. You all found me. And you showed me that family isn't just about blood or biology. It's about choice, about showing up, about loving each other through the hard parts and celebrating the good ones. I choose this. I choose you. All of you. Forever. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The reception was held in the same backyard, full of laughter and dancing and joy. Lena danced with Daniel, with each of the children, even with Margaret, who whispered, "Welcome to the family, officially." As the sun set and the fireflies came out, Lena stood at the edge of the celebration, watching her new family. Daniel was teaching Sophie how to dance properly. Emma and James were arguing good-naturedly about the best way to catch fireflies. Margaret was showing photos to the other guests, already claiming Lena as her daughter-in-law without qualification. This was her life now. Not the one she'd planned in her first marriage, not the one she'd mourned losing, but something better. Something built from loss and hope, grief and joy, endings and beginnings. She thought about that night on the bus station bench, freezing and alone. She thought about the woman she'd been then, broken, discarded, ready to disappear. That woman seemed like a stranger now. Daniel found her and wrapped an arm around her waist. What are you thinking about? How far I've come. How different my life is. Are you happy? Deliriously. Good, because you're stuck with us now. Best decision I ever made. They stood together, watching their family, and Lena felt something she'd never quite believed in before. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of something worth struggling for. 2 years later, Lena sat in her classroom after school, grading papers. She'd been offered a full-time position and had accepted, building a career she loved. The walls were covered with student artwork and photos of her family. On her desk sat a small frame with a quote from Catherine's journal, the one that had changed everything. Love doesn't end just because I do. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Emma made the honor roll again. James won the science fair. Sophie lost another tooth. Normal Tuesday chaos. When are you coming home? Home. The word still made her heart swell. On my way, she texted back. She gathered her things and drove through the familiar streets to the house that had once been Daniel's and Catherine's and was now theirs together. When she pulled up, the kids were waiting on the porch. Sophie ran to hug her. Emma showed her the honor roll certificate. James explained his winning project in detail. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching his family with a smile that never quite faded these days. Dinner's almost ready, he said, when Lena finally made it inside. You cooked? Attempted to cook. I make no promises about quality. They ate together, talking over each other, laughing at James's terrible jokes, listening to Sophie's rambling stories about kindergarten. After dinner, while Daniel helped with homework and Lena cleaned up, she looked around the kitchen and marveled at the ordinary magic of it all. This life, built from the ashes of two broken ones. This family, patched together from grief and hope. This love, multiplying instead of dividing, making room for everyone, the living and the dead, the past and the present, the pain and the joy. Later, after the kids were in bed, Daniel found her in their room, looking at the photo of Catherine on the nightstand. Do you ever feel like she's watching? Lena asked. Sometimes. Do you? Sometimes. And I think she's happy. For us, for the kids, for all of it. I think so too. They got ready for bed, their nightly routine as familiar now as breathing. But before they turned out the lights, Daniel said, "Thank you." For what? For being brave enough to say yes to all of this. To us. "You saved my life," Lena said simply. "No, I just gave you a place to save yourself." "Maybe. But I couldn't have done it without you." She turned out the light and settled into his arms, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, everything was exactly as it should be. Lena thought about that frozen bench one more time, about the woman who'd been ready to disappear into the cold. She thought about footsteps stopping in front of her, about kind eyes and an offered hand, about 3 grieving children choosing to make room in their hearts. She thought about second chances and new beginnings, about the way life could break you open and somehow, if you were lucky and brave and surrounded by the right people, put you back together in a shape even more beautiful than before. And then she stopped thinking and just felt the warmth of the bed, the safety of Daniel's arms, the knowledge that tomorrow she'd wake up and do it all again. Make breakfast, teach her students, come home to her family, live this life she'd found in the wreckage of the one she'd lost. She'd stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. She'd stopped questioning whether she deserved this. She'd stopped being afraid that it would all be taken away. She simply lived, loved, and let herself be loved in return. And that, she realized as sleep pulled her under, was more than enough. It was everything. In the darkness, in the quiet, in the home she'd found when she'd stopped looking for one, Lena Moore, now Lena Cross, finally, completely, came home to herself. And she was home.